use your
No.
Okay. Let's have my mute button. Okay, good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MakerDAO Scientific Governance and Risk Meeting number 166, taking place on Thursday, November 4th, 1700 UTC. My name is Long for Wisdom. I'm one of the governance facilitators at MakerDAO and chairing this meeting for you all today. Yeah, as usual, we've got a bit of an agenda to get through. Before we do that, so I'll just sort of go over, I guess, preamble for this meeting. Yeah, feel free to, we kind of like engaging with people, so feel free to ask questions or comment. Just a reminder, we are recording the call, so please try not to talk over each other too often. We'll sort of stop for questions and comments and stuff as we go. All right, brief reminder as well before we start. It's daylight savings time again. I believe it changed last Sunday for our European friends, and I think next Sunday or next weekend for our US folks. So yeah, be aware that this meeting is scheduled in UTC, so it does mean that the time shifts for everyone, which is fun. All right, with that, I think we can get to our contents. So yeah, we'll start off with the governance roundup as usual. We have. All right, sure. Cool. So polls. Last week we had 3 weekly polls. We had our clean money sentiment poll that sort of summarized or sort of asked for folks' opinion on Rune's recent posts talking about clean money vision and direction for MakerDAO. That did pass. We had a open market committee parameter proposal that also passed, mainly proposing a small stability increase along with some other utility changes. And then we had a poll to lower all the PSM fees to 0%. So those 3 all passed. We also had 2 new green light polls go up on Monday, MDI, which is MD Irradiance LLC, and OHM, which is the Olympus DAO token. So please vote on those if you have strong opinions. And then we also finished 3 green light polls, I think last Monday. So that was OFH, security tokens refinancing, TM2 drop, and CSC. All right, last week's executive also passed and has been executed. That brought us the AVE D3M with a 10 million starting debt ceiling. It also executed some core unit budget transfers and in fact some minor technical improvements as well. There's an executive proposal that will be up for vote tomorrow, which will include those polls I just mentioned, the OMC parameter changes, and the lowered PSM vault fees. And it'll also include a core unit budget transfer for the DUX core unit. All right, that brings us on to MIPS. So yeah, Pablo.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Pablo here with a MIPS update. So the formal submission window closed yesterday, and we've had 9 submissions. Let's take a look. So we have 4 coordinate budgets, and namely a revised resubmission from content production. I'm going to share a link to the changes that have been introduced. A budget for governance communications, a budget for real-world finance, and also for real-world finance and MKR compensation plan. We also have 3 coordinate proposal sets. One of them is a resubmission for DECO 001, also sharing a link here. One for immune file security and one for side stream option services. And finally, a MIP 6 template amendment with added RWA exclusive questions and the special purpose fund to carry out a feasibility study of Singaporean debt security frameworks. We're currently working on getting the ratification polls ready for this. They will be published on Monday. Now, as for the stuff in RFC, we have MIP 57 and MIP 60, which are old acquaintances by now, and also MIP 61, a version of which is currently being trialed. We also have a partial coordinate onboarding of a fixed rate solution by Pairwise. And more controversially, we have one sub-proposal to remove the current real-world finances facilitator, Sébastien Dervaux, and one to onboard William Remo, not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, as its new facilitator. Neither of these proposals have been posted by the affected parties. I believe Artem will talk a bit about the discussion that's taking place on the forum around the subject. But anyway, let's not panic. Next slide, please. The next formal submission window is 60 days from now, as there's no December governance cycle. So I'm sure by then we will have arrived to some optimal solution. And yep, next slide. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Pablo, for that update. Which brings us to, I believe, Artem, who's going to give us an update on what's been going on in the forum.
I'm just posting the forum at a glance link right now. All right. Welcome everybody to the forum at a glance. This is a weekly review of what's happened on the forums, this time for the week of October 28th to November 4th today. So beginning of the week's top announcements, GovAlpha is ready to return their unused DAI budget. They published a post to document the return of over 218,000 DAI to the pause proxy. These funds have accumulated through over budgeting, and the GovAlpha team has contacted MakerBurn to aid with the UI accounting of these actions. Furthermore, GovAlpha intends to continue the process of reviewing and returning unused funds at the end of their budget periods. Well, next up. GovAlpha, yeah, sorry, I was kind of like confused. Yeah, so GovAlpha introduces their first edition of their new initiative, called the Delegate Roundup. The Delegate Roundup aims to provide an overview of recognized delegates operating within Maker governance. It also serves as like a one-stop forum post where members and community of the Maker can monitor how recognized delegates are performing. There's some analysis and charts and details to check out in the post. Next up, we have the SES team, who shared their first major report on benchmark done by their research project, X-Ray. This is a result of research work, including expert interviews, team surveys, desk research, and data benchmarks with valuable contributions from across the industry. There's actually lots of interesting information from the research, so definitely check it out. Moving on to the top 3 discussions. We all know Rune submitted a sub-proposal to offboard the current facilitator of real-world finance core unit. This thread led to some heavy discussion between much of the community. Solutions and next steps are being made to continue with a best decision approach for MakerDAO and its community. Not exactly sure where this is going to lead, but keep an eye out for future posts and polls on the forum. And yeah. Next up, with real-world assets being one of the largest potential opportunities at MakerDAO, their complexity can promote some risk. And in response, Rune published a simplified overview of the arranger model as a solution to mitigate risk when scaling real-world assets. The post contains input from some of the real-world asset experts in the community, and Rune promotes further discussion and feedback by the community to help further refine the framework. Luca Pro is working on a detailed report containing a formal and professional opinion on structuring highly scalable real-world asset capital allocation that's coming soon. And the final discussion from Paper Imperium, where recent publications have promoted a shift in legislative and regulatory focus. The publications are in Paper Imperium's post, and they are narrowing stablecoins to just those that are convertible to fiat. In response to these regulatory updates, Paper Imperium proposes that DAI should be best described as something other than the term stablecoin, now that stablecoin specific regulation is being advanced. He promotes community discussion to help determine some good alternative expressions to use in place of the word stablecoin. And moving on to our signal requests, which isn't as much as last week, thankfully. Seb from Real World Finance presents an update for P1 drop and requests to increase their acquisition price to 2.85 million, which would provide MakerDAO exposure of 2 million per farm. The expected debt ceiling is 20 million, and the 10 plus equity tranche would be 8.5 million. In addition to all that, the signal requests also to add Arkansas as a possible state. And next signal request from James from the Real World Finance presents a detailed MIP 55 signal request to the community for support in their Real DAO Special Purpose Fund. The Real DAO SPF is a unique approach to express the willingness to experiment with other ways to handle real world assets. The Real World Finance Core Unit asks whether MakerDAO would signal 50,000 DAI SPF. Oh, okay, so it's just gouging sentiment. All right, so they're gouging sentiment on the Real DAO Special Purpose Fund. And anyways, they're asking whether MakerDAO would signal for 50,000 DAI SPF with certain conditions to build the infrastructure. And the final signal request, Matic, Comp, Bal, and Aave vaults have shown poor performance and difficulty covering Oracle gas costs. And with addition to other issues presented in the post with Matic, Nick from Oracle's Core Unit signals to offboard these vaults. And that's it for Forum at a Glance. For more information, check out the Forum at a Glance post. It contains more announcements, discussion, 3-point summary, evaluations and reports, as well as ongoing initiatives and help wanted. And if anybody has any feedback on the Forum at a Glance regarding format, adding things, structure, send me a message, let me know. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you very much, Artem. Okay, so yeah, that brings us to our first, I guess, feature of this week's call. I believe Luca is going to, talk a little bit about Real World SandBox.
I think we should give him co-host.
Hi,
I think
guys.
Luca's actually going to share screen, right, Luca? Hi.
Yes. Hi. So let me know when I have the right. Okay. Share. Can you see my screen, guys?
It's getting there.
Yes.
Yeah, we could see it.
Yep.
Awesome. So I'll try to say within 5 to 10 minutes max. Now this topic is complicated, so we obviously remain available for discussion. We have a thread. I will send the link on the chat later, and we remain available on all the means of communication. We might organize an extra call or series of calls to discuss this in more detail, but I wanted to give the community an update on the project we've been working on called Real World SandBox. So if some of you guys might know me in the community, I've been quite active in the real world finance conversations in the last few months. I come from traditional finance background. I've been working in investment banking, private equity, and credit in general.
We're losing you a little bit there, Luca.
I can still figure it out. I can still figure out what he's saying. No, I can't.
Luca, you're cutting out.
I think he completely cut out.
Okay, yeah. Maybe we'll try and come back to Luca, I guess, later in the call. Unless he reappears shortly.
Vaudo, do you want to use?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Okay. Yes.
I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me now? Never happened to me before.
Yeah, we could hear you. Just keep your video off.
Hey,
I
guys.
think that'll probably help.
Yeah, I did. So hopefully we make. So we started this project a few weeks ago to formalize Maker's footprint in real world financing, and on the back of on the back of an SES grant. Now, the core, I don't know what's going on. The core objective of this project was to make sure that the MakerDAO's real-world financing initiative was ready to step up to the next level, which means onboarding and dealing with institutional investors that are able to provide much higher quantum of financing of pledgeable collateral to the community. And also in the same way, at the same time, the objective was to make the whole process more sustainable. So to make sure that there are the right checks and balances in place to onboard and monitor those projects in the right way. As you know, real world financing is a bit more complicated. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, it's
Yes,
perfect.
yeah, it's fine.
Perfectly.
I'm sorry, because I don't know what's going on with my connection. Worst day possible. Anyway, as we know, real world financing is a bit more of a complicated animal compared to the world of smart contracts. So the right implementing the right checks and balances is crucial to have a sustainable, scalable model. The first question we were asking was actually what we want to be in the real world financing space. On the left-hand side, I put a very simple stylized representation of how the real world financing works. So we have a set of intermediaries and a set of counterparties that are collecting their credit coming from borrowers, they're packaging it, then underwriting it, and then distributing it to investors. And investors themselves are a different set. So we have junior investors, senior investors, super senior investor, etc. The activity we have done so far in the real world financing, because given its bootstrapping phase, has been of different nature, more passive or more active, more junior or less junior, depending from the circumstances. So the first question we wanted to ask ourselves and formalize was what type of role Maker should have in this lending stack. Should we be an integrated lender where we just deal directly with the borrowers, or should we have and adopt a ranger model like Rune mentioned? Should we finance the whole stack of credit or focus ourselves on the super senior, much safer lien? The second question we are asking ourselves is how we do that. We do this. Should we do everything internally, internalizing all the activities and the structuring and the legal structures, or leverage all the counterparties to do that for us? So these were the two key questions that are obviously quite broad that we were asking ourselves, and the report is trying to answer, at least from an outside-in perspective. So pillar one that we've been focusing on is what type of credit we want to underwrite. As we know, there are many types of different credit, many types of underlying credit, levels of seniority, maturity, etc. So financing a real estate bridge loan in the US is not the same from a coal plant in Nigeria or a covered bond from Societe Generale. And the second one is how we do it. So how can we have a best-in-class, state-of-the-art process internally to implement the right checks and balances, split origination and risk management, monitoring abilities, and credit management abilities. So the first part of the challenge, the credit nature, is what we have been dealing so far, which is a full understanding and formalization of how lending actually works, what is in our view Maker ideal positioning, and a set of eligibility criteria that define what type of credit we want to get close to and what type of counterparties we want to work. Now, we have the first part of the report in drafting mode almost ready. We will be very happy to share this with the community as soon as possible. But the high level message is that in our view, in my personal view, Maker should become a super senior lender, meaning that we should aim at dealing with the highest quality counterparties and underwriting credit that is not focused on having very, very high and attractive yield, but rather having a stable, sustainable, and scalable risk-adjusted yield. Given our low cost of capital, we don't need to make 10%, but we actually need to make a very solid 1%, and scalable to expand the DAI footprint. The second challenge that we've been working on so far is about process. So how we can make sure that we keep fostering a culture of healthy decentralization, so avoiding the internalization within one core unit of too much responsibilities, how we can avoid single points of failure in the community, and how we can make sure that to draw a process that is easily scalable and replicable and can really bring Maker to the next phase in terms of quantum of credit we want to underwrite. So we, as I said, we've been focusing on the first 2-3 weeks of the report, which is defining and formalizing a list of eligibility criteria of what type of credit we want to underwrite in the detail. And the second part that starts this week will be focused on how we do it. So how can we draw a solid process where we can split the roles in a healthy way and scale. Where to find us? We have been discussing and debating this in calls privately or in forums in person, in public. We have a forum thread that I can post the link here on the chat, but basically it's easy to find. You can just search on the forum SES Project Real World Sandbox, and then you can find my details. I'm on forum, I'm on Gmail, and on Discord. We want to make this as collaborative as possible. After we will release the report that we've produced, we will most probably open a consultation phase to make sure to onboard all the comments coming from the community. And then hopefully, if there is an agreement and a quorum, we might move to propose to governance some implementation steps to make this real. But I think it is very complex, but it is exciting. And I personally think this is the right time to make Maker's approach to real world financing more institutional. I don't know, guys, if you have questions, happy to answer. Otherwise, if it's getting too boring, I can take the questions in private.
We can spend some time on questions if people have them.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. The first one is, who is us? Because you only mentioned yourself in the slide. It could be interesting to see what perspective you bring to the table. And the second one is, you said you want to make operations only with the highest quality of counterparties, and I fully agree. In the Argent model, all the counterparties proposed by Rune are young startups, less than 2 years, without track record. How do you reconcile those items?
Okay, so when I talk about us, I mean 2 things. First of all, I've been leading this project myself, so I'm the author and the main signature on this project. But this is an SES-backed project, so everything we have discussed so far has been shared with the guys at SES. And unless one thinks differently, I think that what we have been working on represent also the view in some way of SES. Obviously, I have a direct expertise, so my input is the main input here. I've been discussing with a lot of other parties within the community that have been involved within real world financing in some shape or form, but these have been collaborations or sources of information and views, and not authorship. And I have to say that most of the people are interested and agree with the way we can improve and scale the process, but this is the content is my responsibility, obviously, in my view alone. How do we reconcile? So first of all, this project and Rune's view on the arranger model are independent. I started this project and I hadn't spoken to Rune ever. Rune was so kind to reach out in the last weeks because he knew what we were working on, and he wanted to get our point of view and share his views on what he thought could be the future of Maker in real world financing. But I haven't been involved in drafting his post, and he hasn't been involved in drafting our report that we will publish. Obviously, there are similarities, but there will also be differences. As you mentioned, Seb, I think one of the key differences and things we need to reconcile is the quality of the counterparties. My view is that the counterparties will have to go through a very thorough and accurate process of onboarding, and will have some key requirements that they need to comply with in order to interact with MakerDAO. Obviously, those requirements will depend on the nature of the credit that we do and on the nature of the credit mitigating factors that are in place. But I think this process will have to be as rigorous as possible. Now, we haven't shared we haven't shared those criteria, and we haven't started onboarding those counterparties, so I think it's very early to tell. But my view is that we need to be as conservative as possible in dealing with the counterparties, meaning in practice that those counterparties will have to have regulatory stamping, will need to prove a solid track record, will need to work with the most reputable borrowers on the back end, and will need to provide best-in-class credit structuring and credit risk mitigating factors. Now, how this will translate into the reality, it's still yet to be seen.
Just to add a bit on what was happening in the chat. So SES is providing the grant. We do believe that real world assets is one of the possible ways to 100x Maker. So it aligns with our mission and vision of scaling the ecosystem, and this is one of the initiatives.
All right, thanks for that. Any other questions?
I guess I kind of had one just in terms of positioning Maker as like the super senior lender. I think that makes a lot of sense given our cost of capital. But I was curious if you had thoughts on how we attract the counterparties. I guess from my perspective, it seems like if I were an institution looking for lending, you know, I'd be much safer off going to a bank with the rates as low as they are right now. So yeah, just curious if you had thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I've been involved in providing liquidity to alternative lenders for 10 years. I started as a hedge fund manager. We were providing liquidity, basically buying credit from originating lenders in the US, and our cost of capital was 8%, 10%. This is what we wanted to make out of the credit net of losses. Then when I started, I changed my job as an investor, and I became a private equity investor. And we owned a bank in the ECB. I was actually sitting on the board as a board observer of that bank, and we were purchasing credit from alternative lenders as a bank. Yields, cost of liquidity is very low today, but it's not zero. If you are a bank, the cost, we were underwriting senior credit originated by platforms of the highest quality at 4 or 5%. So this was our break-even yield. 4 or 5% that levered as a bank becomes 20, 25% ROE. And it's difficult for banks to provide this type of lending at cheaper rates. You can achieve cheaper rates if you have a securitization, and the securitization is very liquid, and then you can access senior lenders at 50 basis points, 1%. But I think Maker is still extremely competitive, even against the most senior lenders. And then it's just another pool of capital. So as we see, Sogen, I don't know the guys at Sogen, but I think these guys they could finance their senior covered bond at negative rates. They are still going for Maker because for them it's access to another pool of capital. And then suddenly that 0%, that very cheap cost of capital of Maker becomes very attractive for other types of solid but higher yielding assets. So I think there is definitely the space for Maker to be an attractive pool of capital for institutional high quality lenders out there.
Hey, Luca, I'd just love to say something here. Thanks for the question, Peyton. You know, I've been involved in actively bringing in a number of real world assets to Maker to date, and what we're seeing now is basically we're raising the bar, right? The new originators that are brought to Maker are going to be in a whole different class than what we've experimented with in the past year. And I'm certainly seeing that out in the market. The level of quality of those that will be seeking capital is significantly higher than where it has been in the past. We're talking banks, large asset originators, and AAA quality borrowers. So very high quality. I guess the question I have for you, Luca, and this also goes to Will, is how will this new SES SandBox work with the Real World Asset Working Group, or Real World Finance Core Unit, I guess is the official name. When we're navigating and we're bringing collateral to Maker, we just need some clarity on who we talk to and how we bring it through the process, and hopefully that'll be resolved relatively soon.
So I can talk for what concerns me, and I will let the Real World Finance Core Unit speak. So as of today, I am just writing a report on the way me as a specialist and Maker community member can see a way we can scale. But what I've been writing in my report, it's simply the product of my views and has no backing whatsoever officially by the community. We're still working on the process of how I think the process can be improved and turbocharged. And I think the process will not be in any way in substitution with what the Real World Finance Core Unit has been doing, is just in addition. So I think personally that having clarity on what type of things we want to do, first of all, has a huge signaling power to the outside world, meaning that signaling what we are ready to onboard and what we are not even ready to waste our time on. And then I think having healthy separation of origination and risk management capabilities and a distribution of the responsibilities outside of the community for the heavy lifting structuring part will be healthy. Now, this is my view, and I will need to detail my view together with the other stakeholders of the project in the second phase that will be we're working on. So the report will be ready in the next 2-3 weeks. But then, obviously, what will happen next will depend on the view of the community and what the community decides to do. So I think the current facilitator or real world financing team members can give you an answer on a better answer today. I'm just providing my view as an expert that has been on a grant by SES, if it makes sense.
Yeah, and just to make that clear, Jason, the idea of this grant is to research on how to scale this up, and one of the ways could be working together. The other one could be creating some parallelization of work. The other one could be different powers checking each other. So one, for example, sourcing, the other one checking the risk, etc., etc. So again, this is not my field of expertise, so I don't want to go too deep, but the idea of this grant is to do this research and to see how we can scale this part that's so important.
Seb, did you want to comment at all? Or?
Yeah, so currently the clarity is not super high, but everything in place as the team is working as they did last week to continue to onboard all the MIPs that are applying. So currently there is no change. Obviously, there is still a bit of a difference, mainly in the last change, and we heard a lot about asset originators of, let's say, borrowers. But obviously, it's difficult to work with a DAO when the direction is changing every day, or let's say every month. So maybe we need to focus as well on bits in the clarity. But that will be solved, I guess, in the following months.
I would like to add some very general comment to this, which has nothing to do with real world finance in particular, but more the structure of the DAO. I think this is one of the things that we'll need to learn dealing with, which is that because everything is transparent and open, there's a lot of communication that's going out about these kind of projects that are very early stage and are not the official policy of the DAO yet. When someone comes to the forum with just a proposal, and definitely when someone like Runa comes to the forum with just a proposal, then this will be picked up by crypto media outlets, for example, and portrayed as, you know, this is what MakerDAO is now doing. And I think we should be very careful in clarifying which is the status of these proposals and what is official DAO consensus and what is approved and voted in versus what are just ideas that are being discussed. And of course, the ideas about the future, they're often more exciting than the details that get voted in and approved when something gets actually implemented. So these ideas naturally will be discussed more as they're more speculative than the boring details of the implementation. So I think this is something we'll need to learn how we deal with that as a decentralized organization and as an open organization. So yeah, I don't think it's just in real-world finance that we'll see this kind of confusion.
All right. Does that maybe leave us in a place where we're ready to move on? Yeah, any closing comments, Luca?
Yeah, no, I think I'm done. I just want to say again that this is a consulting process. Project is unilateral. So any input in the way we're to propose a new design, hence this of the real finance business line, it is more than welcome. So feel free to reach out to me on any email forum or Discord. Very happy to chat. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Luca. That was an interesting presentation. All right, David, do you want to share the presentation again? And we'll move on.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
All right, well, I believe the plan was to talk about the D3M launch and kind of discuss a little bit. So not sure if anybody wanted to introduce or talk about this to start, or sort of introduce us to this.
I do believe Sam was going to volunteer.
Yeah, I can go over it. So as everybody's probably aware, the D3M launched on Tuesday, and as expected, the debt ceiling was maxed out immediately because the borrow rate on Aave is currently quite high. There's a lot of demand to borrow stablecoins. So yeah, it's been going good so far. So I figured maybe I would just, do you have that slide, David? I could just like briefly run over kind of a quick overview of how this works.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I actually did not add it to the deck in time. My bad.
Okay.
Actually, do you want to share your screen really quick?
I do not have it up.
All right, give me just a second then.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so this will just be a quick overview. There's actually a MIP video I did with Stanny like back in May or something. I recommend you watch that if you want a very detailed explanation of how this works and what the risks are involved. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, which one? I like how you have the meme up here. So yeah, there's a very fun meme that was made the other day with the spraying the hose. Yeah, it was the one with the bars and stuff. I had it on my tweet thread. I think it explains it pretty well. I can just go over that example.
Yeah, sure. I just have to reshare the presentation. I just added it.
Okay. Yes, and I think there's an NFT for that JPEG now. So, yeah.
Apologies, my computer is doing weird things.
No worries.
Maybe we can briefly cover the kind of next steps, I guess, because that's sort of fairly cut and dried.
Yeah, so I guess Primož put up a post just, I think it was today actually, to raise the D3M up to 50 million and lower the target interest rate to 3.9%. Currently it's sitting at 4%. So yeah, just to, I guess, explain how the interest rate, the borrow interest rate works on Aave is that it's entirely based on the pool utilization. So the utilization is the amount borrowed from the market divided by the total market size. So the total market size is the amount borrowed plus the available DAI that's available to borrow. So when that's at 80%, that's sort of the sweet spot for Aave, where it will, the interest rate will, it moves up slowly from 0 to 80%, and then it takes a sharp turn at that point and will go up to a 79% borrow rate when it gets up to 100% utilization. So historically, we've seen that Aave just kind of for the DAI market, it just kind of hovers around that that what they call the kink, just because it's sort of like the market equilibrium for that. You got it, David? Yeah, there it is. Okay, so I think this sort of graphic kind of illustrates how the D3M works pretty well. So if you look at the top bar there, that's sort of an example market. So let's say the total market size is 90 million. There is 80 million that's been borrowed in this market, and there's 10 million that's available in DAI, actual DAI. So the utilization, if you calculate 80 divided by 90 million, you get utilization of 89%. This is higher than the 80% sweet spot. So as you can see, the variable borrow rate shoots up to like 37%. It's crazy high. So this is not desirable. And this kind of stuff happens all the time in bull markets. So it's really bad for the users. So what the D3M does is it will look at this and say, okay, I can mint some DAI to basically return utilization back to 80%. So it does the calculation and it sees, okay, I can mint 10 million DAI and then that puts it into the pool of available DAI. Then the calculation is 80 million total borrow divided by 100 million, that's 80%. And the variable borrow rate is at our target desired rate of 4%. Now let's say some random user sort of repays a loan of 5 million. So this comes out of the borrow amount and it is DAI paid back by this user. So it's now actual DAI available to be either borrowed again or withdrawn or whatever. It's in the available pool. So the total market size is still the same, 100 million, but the utilization has dropped to 75%. So this results in a variable borrow rate of 3.75%, which is under what we're targeting. So again, the D3M will do this automatic calculation. It will see this and it will say, okay, I'm going to withdraw 6.25 million because that will give me, again, the target utilization / borrow rate of 80% and 4% respectively. So this happens as frequently as you want. And so ignoring the debt ceiling, which of course will cap the total amount that can be minted into the pool, this will just keep the utilization at 80% no matter what. Unless, of course, it is less than the amount originally deposited. So let's say the interest rate drops pretty low, and the D3M is already hasn't really minted that much. If it reaches 0, it obviously can't withdraw more than it's entitled to. So yeah, I think that kind of covers what the D3M does. It's kind of a cool little module that, yeah, it gives Aave users a really good UX when they're borrowing against DAI. So I think this will help us a lot competitively with, like, say, USDC users who are taking leverage on Aave. If they're doing this calculus, they may be like, oh, hey, I have a maximum borrow rate here of 4% on DAI. You know, why would I use USDC, which has no upper bound effectively? So I think it's a big win-win. Yeah, so any questions? Primoz, did you want to add anything?
No, I think we covered this pretty well, apart if we want to talk about risks and such.
There was a question in the chat that might be good to vocalize for the people listening to the recording. IMEO asks, does this mechanism provide kind of a fixed rate no matter what? Yeah.
Within the D3M having some amount in there and the debt ceiling, yes, as long as it's within that range, yes, it would provide a fixed rate. But it can, of course, drop below 4%. And if the D3M runs out of a DAI that it's previously minted, it will not be able to pull out DAI that it doesn't own. And same on the upper end with the debt ceiling. So as you can see right now, the debt ceiling is maxed, and it has a fairly, because it's a test ceiling of 10 million and the market size is 2 billion, it's not really having much of an effect. And the interest rate on Aave, I think last I checked, was like 8% right now.
Are we still waiting for any audits or additional checks before we would raise the debt ceiling?
Yeah, so we've received a draft of the audit. It looks good. We'll wait for the final report. Also, we want a bit of time for like Lindy effects. So we'll do this like gradually. I think 50 million is a good next step. But you know, you want a bit of time before you really turn it up.
Absolutely. And I just want to mention that thanks to the low debt ceiling that we could bring this to the market quicker. And hopefully this is something we can definitely continue doing in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw in the governance chat this morning, like there was some concern about, I guess, Aave's overall like solvency. And I guess I'm curious what the risks are for D3M modules. Like, is there sort of a cap for our loss besides the debt ceiling? Like, I'm just curious how it behaves if a protocol were to go under. Like, if Aave were to do its version of emergency shutdown, what would happen?
Goes pretty in detail about it, right? Essentially, it's just about capping the debt ceiling at some kind of utilization ratio, right? So because of where that kind of kink, remember Sam was kind of talking about the kink, right? Where there's a kind of steady increase of the rate on Aave, and then once you hit that kink, right, then all of a sudden the rate goes parabolic. So the idea is that because of the positioning of that kink, you have a certain amount of utilization that's always available to withdraw, and that we want D3M to kind of be either kind of within that kind of maxed at whatever that utilization is. And I think Primoz even suggested that we should have like an extra buffer on there as well.
Yeah, I can talk
it
about
really just comes down to how much risk maker governance wants to take, right? Because if you're stuck in Aave because of the utilization, right? If you go too high on the upside with this debt ceiling relative to where the kink is, you can probably extract more yield, right? You can the DAO can get more profit, but the DAO is also taking more risk, right? Because anytime you're locked in, right, you're just holding Aave's debt and hoping that Aave will honor that debt, right? That they're not going to go insolvent.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thanks. Yeah, I gotta read in depth that risk assessment. It looks juicy.
Yeah, so this is one of the risks at Aave. So this is the liquidity risk. But there's like a few other risks. The liquidity risk that Nick mentioned is kind of related to, how high can we go with the debt ceiling? And as he explained, 20% would be like the maximum limit. This would put us at, I think right now would be like 400 million debt ceiling. Probably we'd want a bit more buffer. So we, in the long run, if market stays as it is, we'd probably suggest not to go over 300 million. But before we do that, there are a lot of other considerations I wrote about a bit today already. So just to prepare a community, when we start thinking of increasing from 50 million, we need to address this. So there's this liquidity risk that we described now. Then we have credit risk. Essentially, this means, how DAI that's being borrowed, so the same DAI that D3M supplies, when it's being borrowed, how well is it collateralized and by which assets? And essentially, the credit risk is pretty low currently. And that's because most of the DAI borrowed is just, from so-called recursive leveraged farmers. So basically, people are supplying DAI and then borrowing it. And essentially, the 1.5 billion of DAI borrowed, I think 85% of that should be around 1.2 billion. This is all just DAI supplied and reborrowed. The other part, the 250 million, this is the DAI that's so-called risky, but it's not as risky really because it's mostly collateralized by ETH and Wrapped Bitcoin. So credit risk pretty low right now. The thing is, this can suddenly change, and here's why. So Aave doesn't have a concept of debt ceiling. This basically means that, if there's a bad collateral and if you manipulate oracles, so similar as the attack on Cream last week, or was it this week, you can basically, just steal collateral on the platform. This is probably the biggest issue I have with with just risk mitigation at Aave. But I think 1 hour ago, they just announced Aave V3. So this V3 should be upgraded from V2, and they're going to implement debt ceilings. So this should be, this should be much better for us, because otherwise we'll constantly need to monitor, which we'll do anyway, but we'll really need to monitor whatever asset they add. Like if it's a bad collateral, it can pretty much, create a big hole in the system. And the same way we do collateral risk assessment at Maker, we should do it the same way at Aave, because indirectly we're pretty much facing the same risk, right? So this is credit risk. Then there's a bunch of other risk. One is just, oracle risk. This is also one discussion community needs to have. How much do we want to be exposed to, suddenly different types of oracles because they're using Chainlink? We will be indirectly exposed basically. And then the fourth one, probably also a big one, but it's more technical one, is that this module doesn't really know if something's wrong at Aave, right? And it starts behaving kind of, in a wrong way. So, imagine a scenario when there's a exploit in Aave, a bug or whatever, people start pulling money out. So DAI supply would start, draining, and this would spike up rates. And our module would, instead of pulling money out, would basically start minting more DAI in, right? Because when the rates go up, the module wants to lower the utilization, because this is how it works. So it behaves totally in a wrong way. And we basically have only two risk mitigants. So one is we are using the instant access module debt ceiling, which actually lowers the increase of debt ceiling. So this is, kind of protects us before we can shut down the module, which is the second sort of safety procedure we can take. But the safety module, I think, even has a cooldown period. I think Sam knows more about this. So yeah, this is probably, this is the biggest risk I see of getting too high on debt ceiling, plus the inability of Aave to have debt ceiling constraints, which they will repair. So that's much I can say on the risk side.
Yeah, with regards to the shutting the module down, we do actually have an instant access module for that. So governance can bypass the governance delay to shut down the module in an emergency situation. One other thing that I kind of wanted to bring up, there's been like, I don't know if people are aware of this, but we also actually get the stake Aave rewards from the DAI deposited. So currently those will just flow back to the pause proxy, but this is kind of an interesting transition where we're currently holding another protocol's governance token in ours. So what will we do with that? I don't know.
So I also wanted to maybe just have us start thinking about something else, just when we're thinking about how high we want to go with the direct deposit module. Just that if it gets to be too big, it will compete with PSM and in terms of monetary policy because it's targeting a rate. And that's fine in small amounts, but in my opinion, I think the PSM is probably better suited to addressing our peg, and so we don't want to risk interfering with that. And I don't know at what point that would be an issue, but you know, targeting a rate, you know, if we get the rate wrong, then we have the potential to unwind our PSM too quickly. And if it's empty, then we really don't have as many good tools as we have right now. So I just, you know, when we start talking about like hundreds of millions and stuff, you know, we should keep that in mind, that might mean that we need to take a little more active management of debt ceilings from a monetary risk perspective, just because we cannot target both rates and peg at the same time with, you know, when those two will come into conflict at some point.
It'd be great to have a pipe between the PSM and D3M so it can move the liquidity when needed. I don't know if it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good idea. I mean, also just trying to just go ahead and hard code it so that it's only a certain percentage of the PSMs, which I don't know how big that would be. That's kind of my top of the mind suggestion, just so it doesn't get too big.
I guess I have a question. So how feasible is it to take what we're doing with Aave and point it towards, say, Compound?
I haven't really looked at Compound too much, but it should be roughly the same. I think they use a similar kink in their interest rates and stuff like that. So yeah, not a whole lot of work. We can definitely do it.
So I had one other idea the other day. So we're having issues with long tail of tokens that are not profitable at Maker because of Oracle fees. So there is a way actually for us to create a market which is essentially works like Aave and Compound, and this is this new protocol that's being I think I'm not sure when they actually introduced it, but it's called Trari Capital, which is sort of a Uniswap for lending markets. So anybody can create their own, pool of tokens, and you basically create, your own Compound or Aave with a set of rules. So what Maker could do, I'm not sure how this could be done through governance, but you can essentially, select the tokens with various parameters that would fit our risk criteria, and then you set up this pool, and Maker then does the D3M implementation. And this, I think, doesn't carry Oracle costs for us. There's probably a ton of different risks, but it's like a nice scalable way, how you can actually cover other tokens that you wouldn't want to cover in the core Maker protocol.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. There's a lot of potential to the D3M sort of type modules. So yeah, looking forward to see sort of how it develops as we go. Does anyone want to make any sort of final comments on the D3M? We had a request from, I believe, Nadia and Bourbon to discuss Wintermute and liquidity and market making.
Yes.
So perhaps we can come to that.
We're talking. Okay, I'm talking. All right, so it seems like some people are not a big fan of the Wintermute deal because of various reasons. I think when it first was proposed, the strike price was $5,000 from them, and understandably that pushed a lot of people off. And you know, we sort of never communicated to them what it was that ended the deal. What's going on here? What do you want to see? Two people on the same screen. Yes. Yeah, so we got to close the Wintermute deal. So they want to partner with us like really badly. They are not very concerned about the strike price. If that's a blocker, they, you know, I was talking to him literally just before the call. He's like 4x, 8x, we could do whatever. He's like, we're just mostly interested in partnering. So some of the things, so if that's a blocker, that's definitely something we can negotiate. Some people want to see like metrics, or you know, like a monthly report or something like that. I'm sure they would work with us, and some like some targets that they want. But in general, we have a pretty thin market for Maker. If somebody wants to scale in or scale out in size, they have to do it over the course of weeks, months sometimes. I mean, if we remember what was it, Polychain way back when, A16Z, you know, someone recently who might have been disgruntled, you know, whatever. Everyone has their own reasons for coming in or out of Maker, but they should be able to do this like rather seamlessly. It shouldn't completely like if they want to market sell, it shouldn't just nuke the market. So, you know, it's really nice on the flip side when we have the huge green dildos, it's very nice, but like immediately retracing that. So the price action, I think, is pretty unhealthy within markets. And it just doesn't look good on the chart. It's not really attractive to anyone who wants to invest or, you know, list this on exchanges, I think you were saying. Some others said that maybe we could market make ourselves on like Uniswap. Use standard language. I don't know standard language, Dave. I'm sorry. But some people said we can market make on Uniswap. I think that's a maybe possible, but it's not really necessarily what we're good at. There's impermanent loss, a lot to manage. Wintermute is really good at this. This is what they do. And right now, one of the things they do is they want to market make us so bad, they short on Aave to like grab Maker from all sorts of places just to have liquidity to do this. Trying so hard not to write verbatim for statements. And it's really, you know, they're still going to market make us, but through inefficient means. I think the amount in question right now is 10,000 Maker. That will let the market make for us pretty well. It's a really necessary service. And I think they wanted, the last time I spoke to them was a $20,000 strike. It looks like 10,000. They're open to that. But worst case scenario, we sell them 10,000 Maker at $10,000 or $20,000. I think that's not a really, that's a really big tragedy in my opinion. It's a joke, of course. But the other really good thing is, you know, they are market neutral, but at the end of the day, we're kind of giving a liquidity provider some kind of incentive to maybe move the price of Maker up to whatever it is the strike price is within the term, which I think is not the worst thing in the world. And if we take this deal, I think it's pretty good. One other thing, the unsecured loan, they have a pretty serious reputation to defend. I'm not terribly worried that they would default on this. If they do, I mean, it would be pretty bad to lose 10,000 Maker, but I don't think they will. I think it's a risk worth taking and a very necessary service that they have. Oh, and one of the most important things, Primoz mentioned this on a risk call earlier today. We really do need to have, what's the opposite? We need liquid markets because in the event of a solvency crisis, where we have to mint lots of maker, selling into thin books is devastating, right? So let's say we need to mint however much, it'll just nuke the price of maker. If we have liquid books, we can sell maker, it'll still dump the price, but it'll be healthier for us. So that's something I wanted to say. I hope we can actually close this deal with Wintermute. I think it's going to be good for everyone. They're nice people. They want to work with us. And yeah, Nadia, you want to say anything? Maybe not.
Yes, I just posted in the Wintermute post why it's important to have someone.
Dude, mute that guy.
I'm on Bourbon's computer, so I can hear weird things. I don't know if
that
it's
was not
on,
no, that was on the
on
phone.
you or on someone here. So yeah, I posted different reasons because I think the community need to understand why we need not just DAI liquidity, but also maker liquidity increase. DAI liquidity, I think we all agree we need that now with all the multi-change strategy. I'm seeing low liquidity on Arbitrum, Polygon, and others, which worries me because when new projects are thinking about integrating DAI or even Maker, because maybe they are, I don't know, at DEX or something like that, they are not thinking in DAI, and that's a problem. I think I talked about this the other day with Axie and the running network, which was launched today, and they didn't include DAI, which is terrible because we have a long partnership with them, but it's a liquidity problem right now. And with MKR, well, I think it's a problem for the protocol because of what we just mentioned. It's a high risk to have just individuals managing MKR liquidity. So you can read all the reasons. I wrote it in the forum post. And yeah, next step for this is we want to close all the details for this agreement, the call option, the metrics, and that's what we were expecting when we posted that in the forum, to have the community feedback on what else we should include in this deal. Well, it is an uncollateralized loan of MKR, but it's based on reputation. And I think it's something similar that, of course, not the same, because with the Nexo institutional vault, the agreement was made just by using smart contracts and an executive vote, and they are trusting in us and we are trusting in them. I think here we could try the same instead of creating a foundation and having an uncollateralized loan through that foundation. I think we can start exploring. I think Wintermute guys, they say they are doing this with other DAOs, and for them it's not a problem to do it with us, just from a DeFi provider to a DAO and have a service in that way. So that's something that is worth to explore. This will be the first time we do something like this because we have never gave a MKR loan. So I think next step will be that, to talk with governance and maybe SES if they want to think about how we can structure this MIP to help Wintermute to provide a service to the DAO. I don't know if that should be a core unit. I have no idea. I guess we have to guide them in how we want to structure this service.
Yeah, Peyton says, is there a way we can maybe get revenue out of the deal? And I don't know how these things typically work, but we probably it's probably a service, and we're maybe should be happy not to pay for it.
It's a service because they are providing, when you're a market maker, you're a neutral market maker, you are providing the other side of the market. So if you are, I mean, they will, of course, they will get them MKR, but they will also be like adding USDC, ETH, or USD, euros, the other side of the pair. So no, it doesn't make sense to ask for revenue.
Yeah, and the other thing here is, right, that we need liquidity not just on decentralized exchanges, but on centralized exchanges, right? So the DAO could, you know, put some in Uniswap V2 or V3, right? But just because you have some on-chain liquidity, it doesn't actually cover all the bases, right? So you look at something like Spell or MIM, Magical Internet Money, right? A lot of their collateral portfolio relies on Curve liquidity for the MIM token, right? And even having, you know, some ridiculous amount of liquidity on Curve, they still went and partnered with Alameda to get market making liquidity on centralized exchanges. So it's a two-pronged problem. You can't just say, oh, we're just going to put some liquidity in this DEX and then problem solved.
Yeah, so I welcome the community to post your comments again on the forum. If you have any questions, you can just like send me a DM on Discord. Yes, we're open to like any ideas of how you think we can improve this agreement. And like, I really think this is a service we need. Like, we need market makers helping us, not just with DAI, but with Maker. Like, actually, DAI is like super urgent for us right now, because with all these new side chains, layer 2 and all of that, we are having a problem of the distribution of DAI liquidity on those chains. So I don't have a solution for that, and I'm seeing the problems. So I think it could be Wintermute a good solution. If not, please let me think on what else we can do for this.
Just one remark. So the community lately is quite pushy on two centrifuge deals because contractual obligations are weak in the view of the community. And so they want to start to kill them more or less. And on this one, there will be no contract at all. And that seems fine. And the amount are quite the same. It's bigger here for Wintermute, which is a bit odd. Like, trust is good if it's a DeFi person, but not if it's a reward entity that exists for 60 years. I think there is a bit of schizophrenia within the community on that topic. I mean, you cannot get both at the same time.
All right, just so I understand what just happened. So we moved off the topic of Wintermute. We're talking about real world finance now.
No.
And you mentioned, I just didn't, I'm not sure I was hearing you or understanding what you were saying, Seb. Can you clarify?
No, I'm just comparing Wintermute, where we will lend $30 million to let's say People's Company on New Silver, where we are lending 10 million and 20. And the community has some pushbacks on the last two because there is a weak contractual obligation in the view of the community. So that's not good. Yet for Wintermute, where there is no contract at all, that seems better.
Oh, I get what you're saying, but I think that the argument is that Wintermute has a way more embedded and large like reputation compared to Centrifuge. Like, I think that's like the main reason why we're trusting their reputation.
For People Company, it's a 60 years old company of 50 people. So I'm quite sure that it's a bigger reputation. But yeah, it was just an observation.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing.
All right, so we're reaching the end of our time together today. Yeah, so does anybody have any final comments, thoughts, meetings to plug? Now's your chance. All right, that's it. Then we'll wrap it up. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thanks, guys.